Content hacker and content scale are merging. I wanted to share the game plan with you, tell you why I made the switch to no longer have content hacker represent just me, but come on over here to content at scale, and how and why we're going bigger than big at content at scale. So let's talk all about it. In September of 2021, I sold my writing agency. I started it in 2011. I spent 10 years growing it to 100 people, but it was time to get out. I was ready for something new. And in 2022, when GPT was on the horizon, ChatGPT came around that fall, got 100 million users in just a few short weeks, became the world's most quickly adapted technology ever. I knew that my future would probably include AI in some ways, but I'll tell you, in 2022, I couldn't bank on AI at all. In fact, if you followed me in that year at all, you heard me say, don't use AI, use a human writer instead. You cannot trust AI. The truth was, it didn't help my workload. It didn't cut down time. It really added time because ChatGPT itself was very superficial at best. But in January of 2023, everything changed. I was researching yet another AI writer. And when I say I was researching an AI writer, I mean I was also going to the founders and emailing them, hey, is your tool gonna have fact-checking built in? I was that annoying. But for me, somebody that had built her career on writing, I needed to know these things. So in January of 2023, that's when I found Content at Scale. And I knew that I was looking at the bones, the structure of a technology that could easily replace potentially millions or augment long-form writing jobs. That in-depth inbound article that I spent 10 years refining, learning how to do, and selling as a service. So when I saw what Content at Scale could do, what it was capable of, I immediately reached out to the founder, Justin McGill, and I asked him the hard questions. What are you doing for the research part of writing? Will AI be capable of that? What about plagiarism? What about duplicate content? Not only was there a plan of action for building in real-time research and citations, links to the facts, into the actual tool, the AI. As of that week in January, there was already a plagiarism checker built into Content at Scale. And it was the plagiarism checker I'd used for 10 years, Copyscape. So these answers thrilled me. I'd never heard this from an AI founder. Integrity in the use of AI is critical to me. If you can't check to make sure your content's not duplicate, if you don't know where your facts are being sourced from, that's not high integrity content. So I was thrilled when I found a tool with a founder and a team that actually had a plan for these important things. So I wrote a marketing plan in a weekend. That's how excited I was about Content at Scale. Told them what I would do to grow the brand and pitched them hiring me as a contractor. What the founder and I settled on at the time was starting out as a marketing VP. So I did that, joined Content at Scale mid-January. And I'll tell you, from January till now has been a wild ride. That's probably an understatement. From January to March, I was creating content like crazy. I rewrote an entire book set to launch February 10th. The Content Writer's Handbook, and I repositioned that book around AI because I'd found an AI writing solution that actually augmented, improved my workload, saved hours of time. That book came out, it was a bestseller for 2 weeks, a #1 new release. I created content week after week, launched an email newsletter called The Weekly Casual, and so much more. And by end of March that year, I was offered the role as president. This was incredibly exciting to me. It was an honor to accept that role. It showed me that the team believed in me and all the skills I bring to the table. At the time, I was even helping to build out some brand new concepts like AIO, artificial intelligence optimization, researching our user base to create the AIO model, and more. So what I was doing felt completely new, but it also fit. It felt right. It felt like what I should be doing. But I'll tell you, all along, there was something I struggled with, and it was the fact that I wasn't building my own empire. You know, I have 8 books out. I've launched over 15 different brands. I love creating businesses, and I really love owning what I do. I'm not a very good employee. Add to that here is Content Hacker. This brand is the result of me working in content for 10 years, but really, to me, the identity of Content Hacker was so much more than what I had it at. It's more than coaching. It's more than consulting. Honestly, I think it embodies a whole demographic of people that are doing content with AI, that are creating content to grow their businesses in smart ways, saving tons of time and money. So here is this innovative brand that I own called Content Hacker. I wasn't doing anything with it, really, besides coaching and consulting because I'm full-time over here at Content at Scale. So merging the two and doing something amazing through both made so much sense. And how that conversation started was when the founder, again, in the middle of August, this guy is so smart, said, Julia, you're playing it small. How can you go a lot bigger? And me being pretty crazy, said right back, well, why don't you make me a partner? And ultimately, what made the most sense was bringing Content Hacker into Content at Scale and making it what it will be for all of you, a place for resources, education, free courses, training, a directory of agencies and writers you can hire that have that AIO skill set, and a hub for amazing live events that we can host where we can build and nurture this sense of community. In the end, AI is advancing like crazy. And some big takeaways from the surveys, the AI events that have happened, is that we know it's here. We know it's going to impact hundreds of millions of jobs. In fact, a study by IBM this year of over 21,000 workers in 22 nations has reported that 1.4 billion people will need to reskill. So we know all this is happening, but where do we go to learn how to reskill? To find peers who are doing the same thing, reskilling too. To find mentors who can guide us down the right roads with AI. Well, let me tell you, that is exactly what we want to build Content Hacker to be. We're planning the first live event. It's going to happen right here in Austin, Texas, in March of 2024 on the back of South by Southwest. We're taking over an entire house. I cannot wait to share more. I hope you guys buy tickets and you come see me because it's going to be amazing. But even more than that, we want this to be an amazing community and a resource where you can go, you can send your teams, you yourself can sit and learn and feel like you have actual guidance when it comes to how the heck do I reskill around AI? What do I do? How can I keep my job but reskill around the use of AI and improve efficiency, decrease costs, increase output with quality and integrity still at heart? All these things. We want Content Hacker to be a home for people like you that have questions like that. So I can't wait to share with you the unveiling of the new Content Hacker. We're working on it. Gosh, we have so much in the pipeline. Sometimes we just have to remember to stop and breathe. But every single day is an incredible opportunity in AI. And I'm just so excited that we can charge full steam ahead and unite these two amazing things, Content Hacker and Content at Scale. And I'm honestly so thrilled to be able to announce that I am doing this major move. So to wrap up, I want to share a conversation that the founder of Content at Scale, Justin McGill, and I had, where we kind of candidly just talked big vision and the dreams we have for bringing these two brands together. So let's get into that conversation. So I'm here with Justin McGill, and we're talking about the Content Hacker and the Content at Scale merge acquisition story. So I just learned this, I want to say 2 or 3 months ago. You told me you were trying to buy a Content Hacker. And I was like, what? What a small world we actually live in when I get to meet the person and now partner with that person trying to buy the domain that I owned the whole time. That is such a small world. So what was the idea behind why you wanted that domain?
Yeah, it is pretty crazy. Obviously, I had no idea who you were. Listen, I identify as a growth hacker, right? Like that is something that I've always done, and has gone back to even my agency days. And I can give an example of, back then. So this is 2008, brutal economic times at that point. But, one of the things that I had identified as a way for me to pick up clients was actually through Craigslist and their jobs and their gigs, right? And so I actually built a whole crawler that did this, but manually I was doing this initially. I would spend 6 hours a day going through all of the jobs boards and the gigs boards on every city on Craigslist and responding to anyone that was talking about SEO, digital marketing, whatever. And that's how I got, my initial clients. And so from that, I ended up building like a scraper using RSS feeds and stuff. And, now there's tools and stuff that do that. But at the time there wasn't anything. And so that was how, I got going. Right. And then I've done several more of those types of things along the way. So anyways, the point there, I was doing it different. I just didn't know what until Sean Ellis coined that term growth hacker. Right. And I was like, okay, yeah, I like that. And that was a community-driven site, and growthhacker.com. And I got into the sales automation space. And around that time, there was a domain called saleshacker.com. And so that was another sales-driven community. When I started working on what is now Content at Scale, I just felt like the people doing this are content hackers. That is what they are. Yep. And so I was like, well, let me try to grab contenthacker.com, right? And so I didn't even go to the website. I just went to GoDaddy, tried to buy it, and saw that it was not available, which was unfortunate. And so looked at the site for about 2 seconds, said, who the hell is this girl? God damn it, right? And then just moved on to, try to figure something else out. That was how that all came about. And then of course, I mean, we just never communicated. I mean, this is a couple of years later. You randomly came across what I was working on through one of our ambassadors, if you will, and saw us featured in a video and stuff. But yeah, that's small world for sure. It took me a second to realize, like, oh wait, this is who has Content Hacker. But yeah, so that was always how I viewed our user, right? Like who would actually use content at scale. And I felt like they were content hackers at heart. They were people trying to create quality content, but not have to spend hours on end to do it, or not have to pay an ungodly amount to get writers to write it, and just be able to do it efficiently. And so, and programmatically, right? I mean, that is kind of the whole point of the hacking aspect. And so that was the whole genesis there for sure.
So what year was it that you were on Craigslist getting your first clients?
This was 2008.
Okay. So I started in 2011, and that's how I got my first clients. I didn't do it with automation, but I was on Craigslist looking at the writing gigs, and I would go city after city. I would get cell phone numbers from wherever I could to get those confirmation texts, so you could log in. And I did like applied to hundreds of gigs. That's how I got my first clients. So that's
awesome.
Crazy.
Yeah, and so then you learn that like Craigslist, they're like blacklisting you, ghosting you, right? Where it's like you think your messages are going through, but none of them are because they're the same and stuff like that. So there's all of these things I didn't realize at the time was going on, but through coding and building out like that automation and stuff, we were able to change messaging and do that whole thing. So got better at it, and then I was like looking at top results for different keywords and trying to find contact information for them. That would ultimately lead to lead views years later. But, that was essentially what I was doing. And so I'd look for, on their website if they had contact info. If not, then would look up who is, right? So it tells you information on the domain. Now, most of them are all private, but there was probably about 35% or so that weren't at the time. And so, if we would crawl the site, Cameron, it was actually the one that built this for me back then. And then we built the first like cold email tool where it would like take their keyword that we were targeting and logged where they were in the results. So if they were 62nd, right? And then it would save who was number one and be like, this company's getting all the traffic, right? And I'd like to help you move up the results and stuff. So no one was using that term cold email. I was the first to really be talking about that even back in like 2014, 2013. So I ranked like number one for that pretty easily because, it wasn't really a term, but I just associated it with the cold calling. It's just that this was easier, more scalable. I didn't want to spend my time doing cold calling and stuff. But, so that was another little growth hack early on, agency days that I deployed. But yeah, like I said, I just always kind of associated with that term. And content hacker, like I said, I think sums up the customer base really well, right? People that are using content at scale are content hackers in my view. And so, that was something that was attractive to me as part of this. Obviously, I had turned down millions of dollars, right? From people interested in investing literally 7 weeks into this thing. So it was nothing I wanted to do or go down. I'm not a fan of that model, quite frankly. And so I just never really envisioned doing anything other than giving big payouts at the end of this thing and rewarding the people that were still there fighting the good fight with us, right? So that was always the approach. And then, this opportunity, I'll say, presented itself. And, obviously we were able to work through all of that and get this finalized, which is exciting.
Yeah. It's interesting. So your perception of content hacker was, how do we essentially get great content in the shortest amount of time? And whenever I started, coined that term, got the trademark, bought the domain 2018, my idea was, how do you get the most growth out of your content? And sometimes it meant spending the most time on that content piece. Like Ollie Gardner, who founded Unbounce, like he got major notoriety, but it was through a 10,000 word guide that, like, the Noob's Guide to Internet Marketing. It was one of the first ones. But it like took him months to create that, but it was the ultimate growth hack to get that business on the map. So that's how I saw content. And then you were like the technology person. How do we actually do this in the shortest amount of time? So I think uniting that is something that you don't see in a lot of businesses, where it's usually like you're kind of missing one side because you just have the tech or you just have that quality focus. So I think both together, there's like so much we can do to help people with just understanding like, how do I create content? How does it grow my business? But not just that, like, how do you do it in a better way because AI is here? So I'm sorry I wrecked your plans of not having a partner.
No, that
It's
is
worth
such
it.
an interesting concept, right? Like you came at it from like hacking growth through content and doing it through, extra attention and quality and everything on the content. Mine was more programmatically, how do we do content marketing at a scalable level? And I think by taking those two concepts and merging them together, that is what content at scale does, right? I mean, that like we are focused on quality content first and foremost. We're the first to do this, right? We're positioned well. I mean, we're known now at this point as being a quality provider, but we also do it through artificial intelligence, right? And so it is the merging of those two backgrounds, interestingly enough. I think the big thing was more so viewing our, like, you were building out a brand around that. My thing was more so building a community around it, right? Like where people could identify and associate themselves as content hackers, and therefore we'd have, this resource almost, versus trying to build like a personal brand around that. That was what it took, obviously, for us to come together. But I think, where it goes from here is really exciting. So, that community aspect, putting a ton of resources into the education side of content marketing, of SEO, of growing through content. Obviously, you've got some big plans on with events and stuff. So, I think there's a lot there that we'll be able to incorporate and bring into our overall brand, right, with content at scale. So we're going to keep that separate, obviously, in terms of like domain. We're not going to forward and do all of that. But, the content hacker site will become ultimately the community, both for like a free community as well as our customers. They'll have like a different area within that community to go to. But yeah, I'm excited. I think, it's just I don't know, it's just like this like perfect convergence here, right? I feel like, and timing wise, it's worked out. We're at a point where it was like, okay, we've grown this far in a year, less than a year. We've done really well, right? I mean, we've got a 40 plus person team, and now, we haven't had to go raise money. We're profitable. It's great. Now is like, okay, how do we take that next step, right? How do we ultimately become this $100 million a year type company? And so we had to think bigger. And, I think both of us working towards that goal together made a lot of sense.
Yeah. And speaking to your point about not taking investment money, I heard it said, I think yesterday, Russell Brunson actually said this. He's like, I don't believe in taking money from anyone but your customers. And so I think you have the same mindset where it's like, well, that can really cause bloat. And we've seen it in other AI companies where you have to like pacify this board of people that's completely unrelated to helping the end customer. So I like that, while we're merging these brands together, you're not headed in that direction. So that focus doesn't get lost. If anything, it probably gets clearer because that's what you want. And that's what I want for this company.
No doubt. I mean, you end up trying to grow at all costs, right? I mean, that's the whole VC mantra. And typically, like, there's a rule of thumb generally where companies that go that route raise money, they're out of it within a year because that's what they're forced to do, right? And it's like, it's not the route for me. And listen, I've gone the other route too, where I've just raised like a small round with LeadFuse, where it was just like a friends family type round, some angels, and it was like not something I was ever going to go raise a Series A for. And I was very upfront about that because even then I didn't want to do it. But even that type of a round is just not something I enjoy. I've got to put together some sort of a recap and plans still, right? You're still communicating, even though friends family type thing, it's still something where you're kind of indebted to them in a way, right? And it's like, I just don't like the feeling of it. And so I wanted to ultimately just focus on a company that could be profitable and not need to go that route. I think there are times and places for it, right, where funding would help. Maybe it's an acquisition. Maybe you've got, some proven channels that are working from a growth perspective. You need to accelerate. So there's some cool things like Tiny Seed. Rob Walling, he was actually an investor in LeadFuse, but he runs that. Great concept, right? Totally different than a traditional VC route. But, like I said, it's just not for me, right? It's not something that I personally want to do, but that's just me personally. So yeah, that was never an option. It was the only option was to make this a success and go all out to make that happen. And along the way, obviously, we've picked up some really cool team members that have greatly expanded what we're capable of, and that's exciting. We've made some acquisitions, not just the Content Hacker one and bringing you into the fold in that way, but actual like other software companies and stuff that we're pulling into the product. And so now we're thinking bigger picture like that, and I think that's all part of this, right? I mean, that's a part of our growth plan, at least.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think the sky's the limit. We could probably end there. So I'm excited for what's ahead.
No doubt. I'm looking forward to it.
Same.